Insane Crimes, Part 2. Joey Gatos Jr., the child actor who played Zach Mooneyham in School of Rock, was arrested in Florida in 2019 after allegedly stealing multiple guitars and amplifiers from local music stores. Authorities said he'd enter shops, test out pricey instruments like a professional, then simply walk out the door with them before pawning them off for quick cash. The spree reportedly lasted several weeks before he was caught, and police suggested the thefts were connected to struggles with substance abuse. Once celebrated for his guitar skills on screen, Gatos' real-life downfall was a far cry from the rock star dream that made him famous. In 1926, jazz legend Fats Waller was leaving a Chicago nightclub when four armed men suddenly grabbed him, threw him into a car, and drove off. Initially terrified, Waller soon realized he wasn't being robbed. He was being delivered as a surprise birthday gift to none other than mob boss Al Capone. Forced to play piano at Capone's private party, Waller ended up performing for 3 straight days, while dozens of gangsters cheered, drank, and shoved cash into his pockets. When it was finally all over, Waller stumbled out of the mansion completely drunk, covered in sweat, and stuffed with thousands of dollars in tips. Despite the bizarre ordeal, Waller reportedly laughed it off afterwards, saying it was the best paying gig he ever had by far. Morbid Facts, Part 775. In 2022, 39-year-old Stephen Dierkes was working at Caterpillar's foundry in Illinois when he suddenly slipped and fell into a large vat of molten iron heated to 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. The human body has zero chance at that temperature as he was vaporized instantly. A coworker said part of his body was still on the platform while the rest of it melted like candle wax. OSHA later found several severe safety violations, but nothing could undo one of the most horrific workplace deaths in history. Kazuko Fukuda, dubbed the Woman of Seven Faces, strangled a coworker in 1982 and disappeared, launching one of Japan's longest manhunts in history. But instead of hiding, she reinvented herself over and over, using fake identities, constant moves, and even plastic surgery to change her face. She stayed free for nearly 15 years, long enough that Japan's statute of limitations on murder was about to expire. But just months before time ran out, a diner owner recognized her from a TV show, and police confirmed her identity using fingerprints on a beer bottle. She was finally sentenced to life in 1999, but died in prison just 6 years later. Morbid Facts, Part 781. After his mother's death in 1989, actor Michael Caine discovered a family secret she'd hidden for over half a century. He had an older half-brother named David who'd spent his entire life confined to a psychiatric hospital. His mother had given birth to David long before marrying Michael's father, but when the boy developed severe epilepsy and was institutionalized as a teen, she told everyone she was just visiting a cousin each week, never revealing the truth even to her own sons. Caine only learned of David's existence when he was in his 50s, realizing that while he was building a life of fame and fortune, his brother was wasting away in a mental asylum and died completely forgotten. Just a century ago, a Down syndrome diagnosis was a death sentence, as parents were often told not to get too attached. In the early 1900s, the average life expectancy was barely 12 years. Most children died from infections or heart defects long before adulthood, often abandoned in mental hospitals and forgotten by their families. Even by the 1980s, very few people with Down syndrome lived past 25. But today, medicine and compassion have finally caught up. Thanks to modern care and advancements in heart surgery, people with Down syndrome now live well into their 60s and beyond. Proof that what was once a tragedy of neglect is now a story of survival. Extra Morbid Facts, Part 55. During the midnight premiere of The Dark Knight Rises in Aurora, Colorado, a 24-year-old shooter entered the packed theater through an emergency exit wearing full body armor, tossed gas canisters into the crowd, and opened fire with an AR-15, a shotgun, and a Glock. In just 90 seconds, he fired more than 70 rounds, killing 12 and injuring dozens more as movie sound effects mixed with real screams. Among the victims was Alex Sullivan, celebrating his 27th birthday and first wedding anniversary; Jessica Gawi, a 24-year-old reporter who'd narrowly escaped a Toronto mall shooting just weeks earlier; and 6-year-old Veronica Moser, who was killed instantly beside her 25-year-old mother, Ashley. Ashley was shot in the neck and abdomen, left paralyzed, and lost her unborn baby, later waking up in the hospital, repeatedly asking where Veronica was, not realizing she was gone. The shooter was found calmly waiting outside, calling himself the Joker, while police discovered his apartment rigged with explosives meant to kill the investigators who entered. His notebook revealed a cold plan to maximize casualties, as he was sentenced to 12 life terms plus 3,300 years, but survivors say no punishment could ever possibly match the horror inflicted on that night. Morbid Facts, Part 782. In 2004, 23-year-old Florida teacher Deborah LaFave was arrested for having an illegal relationship with her 14-year-old student, in other words, raping him, after the boy's aunt caught them together and alerted his mother. What made the case even more disturbing was the public's reaction. Instead of outrage, much of the media fixated on her looks, calling her too pretty for prison, and treating the abuse like a scandalous affair rather than a crime. She pled guilty in 2005 and was sentenced to 3 years of house arrest, 7 years of probation, and lifetime registration as a sex offender, but never spent a single day in prison. These were the final texts sent by Eddie Justice as he hid in the bathroom during the 2016 Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, one of the deadliest mass shootings in American history. For 3 terrifying hours, the gunman roamed the club and executed anyone he saw, killing 49 and wounding 53. Victims tried to barricade doors, play dead, or call loved ones as SWAT teams surrounded the building. When police finally stormed in and killed him, the scene inside was pure horror. Bodies stacked all over, blood flooding the dance floor, and phones still ringing in the pockets of victims. As part of a 1974 art performance, artist Marina Abramovich told visitors she wouldn't move for 6 hours no matter what they did to her. She placed 72 items on a table and invited people to use them on her however they pleased with no punishment. There were objects for pleasure, including a rose, perfume, and wine, as well as objects for pain, including scissors, a whip, and a loaded gun. Visitors were gentle to begin with, but gradually got more aggressive as they became comfortable. Within 3 hours, all of her clothes had been completely cut off, and some people even started slicing her skin. She was sexually assaulted various times and had rose thorns stuck in her abdomen. One person even held the gun to her head until someone else took it away. Once the performance was over 6 hours later, the crowd scampered like mice to avoid an actual confrontation. Afterwards, Abramovich said, "If you leave it up to the audience, they can kill you." 19-year-old Sam Ballard was a star rugby player in Australia until he was dared to eat a garden slug at a team party. The slug ended up infecting him with an awful condition called rat lungworm, which paralyzed him and eventually killed him 8 years later. Morbid Facts, Part 779. In 2015, 20-year-old Lauren Bunner took his ex-girlfriend, 18-year-old Jolie Callan, hiking at Mount Cheaha, the highest point in Alabama. Just before sunset, he took a haunting photo of her taking in the view at the edge of a cliff, completely unaware it would be the last thing she ever saw. Moments later, he shot her twice in the head before pushing her body off the mountain. Bunner later called 911 and calmly confessed, claiming it was part of a suicide pact he couldn't go through with, but investigators found no trace of such an agreement. It was premeditated murder, and in 2017, Bunner was sentenced to 52 years in prison for killing the girl he once called the love of his life. In 2009, Michelle Fox was accidentally shot in the face by her husband while he handled a loaded shotgun. The blast destroyed almost everything. She lost both her eyes, nose, and entire upper palate. Surgeons couldn't fully rebuild her, so they created a custom magnetic prosthetic face made from silicone and acrylic that literally snaps onto metal implants in her skull. She now lives every day with part of her face detachable, a tragic reminder of how one careless moment can erase your identity in a split second. In 1894, a priest in Germany saved a little boy from drowning. That little boy was Adolf Hitler. In 2013, a Clemson student ran an experiment to help turtles safely cross the road. So he placed a fake turtle in the road to observe driver behavior and accidentally discovered something very disturbing. He found that 6% of people deliberately went out of their way to hit the turtle. After Elvis died on the toilet at age 42, his doctor said the cause of death was an embarrassing case of chronic constipation. His stool was so backed up from drugs that he hadn't taken a dump in at least 4 months. In ancient Rome, men found guilty of grapes sometimes had their testicles crushed between 2 stones. In 2011, Tokyo officials went to congratulate the oldest man in the city on his 111th birthday. But upon entering the man's home, they instead found his mummified remains sprawled across his bed. He'd been dead for 30 years, and his family was still collecting the pension money he was receiving. These are the graves of a Catholic woman and her Protestant husband, who were not allowed to be buried together in 1888. Until as recently as 1999, doctors believed that babies couldn't feel pain and performed surgeries on them without anesthesia. Morbid Facts, Part 780. In 1935, Ann Cooper Hewitt, daughter of wealthy inventor Peter Cooper Hewitt, checked into a San Francisco hospital for what she believed was a simple appendectomy, but woke up unknowingly sterilized. Her Her own mother had secretly convinced the surgeons to tie her fallopian tubes while she was under anesthesia. The motive was pure greed. Anne's father's will stated that if she ever had children, she would inherit millions. But if she died childless, her fortune would revert to her mother. To secure the money, her mother permanently destroyed her ability to have children, then tried to justify it by calling Anne mentally unfit and promiscuous. Anne later sued in one of the most shocking court cases of the 1930s, but despite national outrage, the criminal charges were quietly dropped. The case was settled in private, and Anne's mother never spent a single day in prison. For the rest of her life, Anne struggled deeply with depression and died at just 40 years old, while her mother outlived her by more than a decade and died comfortably in 1969. JFK's little sister Rosemary suffered from mood swings throughout her childhood. Fearing that she would end up embarrassing the Kennedy name, her father arranged for her to receive one of the first lobotomies when she was 23, and the surgery was completely botched. Doctors asked her to sing "God Bless America" while they sliced away at her brain with a tool that looked like a butter knife, and they stopped the surgery when she became incoherent. It left Rosemary completely incapacitated and unable to walk or speak until her death in 2005. Born in 1661, King Charles II of Spain was the product of 200 years of inbreeding that intended to strengthen the family line. He was breastfed until the age of 4 and never fully learned how to walk. As an adult, he was completely illiterate and could barely chew or speak due to his deformed jaw and enlarged tongue. He was so ugly and disfigured that his own wife was terrified of him. His autopsy revealed some rather disturbing findings, stating that his heart was the size of a peppercorn, his lungs corroded, his intestines rotten and gangrenous. He had a single testicle black as coal, and his head was full of water. Just last year, a woman with type 1 diabetes died after opting for slap therapy instead of taking her insulin. She apparently had a lifelong fear of needles and grew tired of pricking herself, so she went to an alternative healer who treated her with the traditional Chinese method of slap therapy, during which the patient slaps themselves in order to expel poisonous waste from the body. She died on the 4th day of treatment due to not taking her insulin, while the alternative healer received 10 years in prison. Stephen Russell escaped prison by using laxatives to fake the symptoms of AIDS. He then called the prison posing as a doctor and asked for any prisoners interested in experimental treatment for AIDS. Russell volunteered himself, and once he was out of Texas, he sent a death certificate to the prison stating that he had died. Choi Gap-bok escaped by squeezing his body through the food slot at the bottom of his cell door. Choi was a yoga practitioner who applied skin ointment to slip through the tiny slot measuring 6 inches tall and 12 inches wide. In 1980, autistic savant Mark DeFriest was sentenced to 4 years in prison on charges that were basically nonsense. However, his original sentence has since developed into 34 years after 7 successful prison escapes. DeFriest could replicate any key by memorizing the pattern and reconstructing them out of anything available. In 2007, Nicolas Cage bought a Tyrannosaurus skull for $276,000 after winning a bidding war with Leonardo DiCaprio. But upon later finding out that the skull had been stolen from Mongolia, Cage immediately turned it over to authorities. While in prison, Unabomber Ted Kaczynski received an invite to the 50-year reunion of his graduating class at Harvard. He RSVP'd, listing his occupation as prisoner and his 8 life sentences as awards. In 1979, the FBI formed a fake company which attempted to bribe members of Congress. About 25% of them accepted the bribe and were convicted. Morbid Facts, Part 778. In the 1950s, doctors at Tulane University, led by Dr. Robert Heath, conducted one of the most disturbing neuroscience experiments in history. They implanted an electrode into a woman's brain, right in the region responsible for pleasure, and gave her a button that let her trigger it whenever she wanted. The result was terrifying. She began pressing the button non-stop for hours, then days, completely abandoning her family, her responsibilities, and even basic hygiene. She refused to eat or sleep, ignored everyone around her, and focused only on getting another jolt of artificial euphoria. She pressed it so obsessively that she developed an open, bleeding sore on her finger, but kept going anyway. When doctors finally took the device away, she begged them to give it back, became depressed and agitated, and even showed withdrawal-like symptoms because nothing in real life gave her pleasure anymore. The case horrified researchers so badly that human pleasure center experiments were largely shut down because it proved that if you could manually trigger happiness, it might destroy your ability to live without it. In 2007, a thief drove a $300,000 Porsche through the glass window of a luxury car showroom. After running out of gas almost immediately, he abandoned the car nearby. But the thief held on to the keys, brought a can of gas to the police station, and stole the car again. After Drew Barrymore posed nude for a 1995 issue of Playboy at age 19, her godfather Steven Spielberg had a response for her. For Drew's 20th birthday, he sent her a quilt with the words "Cover Up" stitched on it. He also included a copy of the magazine with her photos altered by his art department to make her appear fully clothed. In 1828, American artist Sarah Goodridge painted a miniature portrait of her own breasts and sent it to a man she liked. It's considered by historians to be one of the earliest cases of someone sending nudes. After Rasputin's dramatic murder in 1916, it was rumored that his beef bayonet had been severed, preserved, and worshipped by a group of female devotees who claimed it could cure infertility with a single touch. Decades later, a Russian museum began displaying a preserved phallic object in a jar, claiming it was Rasputin's 11-inch Maniconda. The item became famous, but many experts dismissed it as a hoax, most likely a sea cucumber or animal organ. The item is still on display at a sex museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. The great Harry Houdini once escaped a prison cell while fully nude to show that he wasn't hiding anything to help his escape. But the guards who checked him apparently failed to fully inspect him, since Houdini was hiding the key up his chocolate starfish. Pubic wigs known as merkins were worn by prostitutes as early as the 15th century. The purpose for this accessory was that pubic hair was once considered popular and attractive, but sex workers often shaved their lower parts to avoid pubic lice, and these merkins also helped them cover up signs of STDs from their clients. Early colonizers of the United States commonly used corn cobs as toilet paper, since they were soft, plentiful, and the grooves were quite efficient at getting the job done. The Roman Emperor Elagabalus was only 14 when he assumed power and would often prostitute himself in taverns and brothels. He would frequently stand around naked while swinging his ding-a-ling, and would offer vast sums of money to any doctor who could give him a vagina. He was killed at age 19, and his only positive legacy was the invention of the whoopee cushion, which he would use on unsuspecting dinner guests. Insane Crimes, Part 3. In 1996, Robert Downey Jr.'s drug addiction spiraled into one of Hollywood's most infamous meltdowns. After a cocaine binge, he wandered into a neighbor's home completely naked, believing it was his own house, and fell asleep in a child's bed. The family found him passed out the next morning and called police. It became the defining moment of his downfall before his miraculous comeback as Iron Man years later. In 2007, an elderly man charmed staff members at a Belgian bank by bringing them chocolates and posing as a wealthy investor. After months of building trust, he was given VIP access to the diamond vault, then vanished with $28 million in diamonds. Investigators later found his identity was fake, and neither he nor the jewels were ever seen again. In 2013, a California woman named Etta Lopez waited outside a county jail for hours just so she could slap a deputy in the face and get arrested. When officers asked her why she did it, she calmly admitted that she wanted to go to jail to quit smoking, since she knew tobacco wasn't allowed behind bars. Her plan worked. She was immediately arrested, charged with battery of an officer, and sentenced to 63 days in jail, all to kick her nicotine addiction the hard way. This famous mummy found in the ash of Pompeii appeared to be satisfying himself during his final moments in 79 AD. During a 1998 soccer match in the Republic of Congo, a lightning bolt struck one of the goal pitches. It killed all 11 members of the home team, who were all wearing metal spikes, but the other team was left completely unscathed since they'd all been wearing rubber cleats. This is a photo of two engineers embracing for one final hug while standing on top of a wind turbine engulfed in flames. One of the men jumped to escape the fire, while the other was burned alive while attempting to reach the staircase. Here's a photo of a little African girl at a zoo in Belgium in 1958. Visitors would often throw bananas and peanuts to her as if she was an animal. A hitchhiking robot that relied on the kindness of strangers to travel the world made it safely across Canada, Germany, and the Netherlands. But just 2 weeks into its American tour, Hitchbot was found in Philadelphia with its arms and head ripped off. Morbid Facts, Part 575. On December 14, 2012, 6-year-old Jesse Lewis wrote "I love you" with his finger in the frost on his mom's car. Just hours later, he would be killed in the Sandy Hook school shooting, but died a hero. Before he was fatally shot, Jesse saved the lives of 9 of his classmates by yelling for them to run while the shooter reloaded. In 2004, French authorities found a fully functional movie theater deep in the Paris catacombs, complete with seating, projectors, and a full bar. When police returned a few days later, the entire setup was gone and a note was left reading, "Do not try to find us." Morbid Facts, Part 580. Known as the Elephant Man, Joseph Merrick suffered from awful deformities that horrified and fascinated Victorian society. Rejected by his family, the Englishman joined a circus and performed in a freak show to earn his living. Merrick's disfigurement likely caused excruciating pain throughout his life, as he had to sleep sitting up propped against his knees due to his 22-pound skull. He died in 1890 at the age of 27 when he attempted to sleep lying down like a normal person, resulting in a broken neck that led to his suffocation. In his later years, Nikola Tesla became obsessed with a particular white pigeon, claiming that he understood her and she understood him. He said he loved her like a person and received visions from her. When the pigeon died, he said that the light in his life had gone out, and he knew his life's work was finished the moment she died. In 2019, a man from the UK suffered a 9-day erection after crashing his moped. The injury had disrupted his blood flow, causing his wiener to remain engorged. Once at the ER, he was classified as having a grade 4 erection, the highest possible tally on the erection hardness score. Doctors had to drain the blood and surgically redirect the vessels before the man made a full recovery. In the late 1980s, a woman went on a vacation getaway where singles could meet other singles. She quickly thought she met the man of her dreams and decided to sleep with him that night. But when she woke up in the hotel room the next morning, the man was gone and there was a small wooden coffin on the table next to her. Inside was a note that read, "You are now HIV positive. Welcome to the world of AIDS." 18-year-old John Thompson was home alone when he had both of his arms ripped off in a farming accident. But he still managed to get up and dial 911 with a pencil in his mouth. He miraculously survived and both of his arms were reattached. Co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, was denied after begging for whiskey on his deathbed and died 36 years sober. According to some ancient beliefs, your birthmarks show how you died in your past life. In 2010, a 17-year-old Chinese boy sold his kidney on the black market so that he could buy the new iPhone and iPad. 8 years later, the man's other kidney failed, and now he's bedridden for life. This massive pile of buffalo skulls shows how the population of American buffalo dropped from 30 million to 300 in just 50 years. Most were killed by the U.S. military to deprive Native Americans of their primary food source. Morbid Facts, Part 783. On October 19, 2025, 18-year-old Kimber Mills was celebrating with friends at a bonfire in Alabama when 27-year-old Stephen Tyler Whitehead showed up uninvited, a stranger to nearly everyone there. Witnesses say he began harassing people at the party before pulling out a gun and firing into the crowd. Kimber, who had never even met the man, was struck in the head and leg. Her friend Silas McKay, who intervened and tried to protect her, was shot several times but survived after multiple emergency surgeries. Kimber was rushed to UAB Hospital in critical condition, but her brain injuries proved irreversible. As her family made the heartbreaking decision to remove her from life support, hundreds of classmates, teachers, and nurses lined the halls for her honor walk, a silent tribute to a girl whose compassion lived on through others. Her heart went to a 7-year-old boy and her lungs to another patient in need, an ending that reflected the kindness she'd hoped to share as a future nurse. Whitehead has been charged with murder and multiple counts of attempted murder, but has yet to fully explain why he opened fire that night, leaving a community completely shattered by his senseless act of violence.